Hey everybody, Chris Thunderlaser, and in this video we are going to do a little tutorial on everybody's favorite, alignment. This will be covering the bolt series, so you have a couple of other things at play here with the beam expander on the tube, and also you do not have a third mirror that is adjustable. So a couple of things that are a little bit different, but I'm going to try to make it as easy and painless as possible. So a couple things you're going to need is a flathead screwdriver, a pen to mark the paper when you're pulsing in multiple areas so that you can reference it, a 3mm Allen key, a 2.5mm Allen key, and your choice of pulsing material. I'm going to make a recommendation on this one. If you have a thermal printer to print labels, cut them up into slices like this and use this. You can use a lot less power. They do not burn as easy as using tape. If you do use tape, triple it or double it up so it absorbs the pulse as opposed to burn right through. With that said, let's get started on the alignment. Okay, so looking at my bolt, I have the back door open. I also took off the side door so I have easy access to this mirror adjustment, more for showing you, the audience, but you are more than welcome to take that door off. It's pretty easy, just has one little latch on it and it slides right out. Quick overview of what we're looking at. We are looking at the beam expander. We're going to have to remove this. We have our combining lens right here, which takes our red dot pointer and it combines it with the beam. So the beam is coming out of the tube through the combining lens, hitting the mirror and then shooting forward onto mirror number 2. So this is mirror number 1, this is mirror number 2. And then it shoots across to the head. Let's get down here and look. Shoots across to the head to mirror number 3, which is not adjustable. So these two alignment points here are going to be crucial to getting the beam out of that head correctly. One of the first things that we are going to have to do is take off this beam expander. So what you end up doing is turning it from the front side. It may be a little tight depending on yours, but we are just taking this beam off because the first pulse that we're going to do is out of the tube to make sure that the mount is centered. So the pulse coming out of this hole right here is crucial because every single optic will drive the beam in a different direction. So we want to make sure that it is as centered on these optics, the best that we can. So let me get my piece of thermal label that I cut up already. Let me get this. And what you're going to have to do is, it is a little sticky, so when you go to peel it off, just be careful that it doesn't leave behind a residue. Go ahead and wipe it off or peel it off. But the nice thing about some of these stickers, these thermal stickers, is when you press on it nicely, it does give you a really good imprint. This way you can really tell where that pulse is coming through. Now let's go over to the pulse screen real quick and set this up for a lower amount of power so we can just make a little pulse on this paper. Okay, so looking at this screen, and let's keep in mind that there is another article and video on how to adjust the beam expander. There is another article and video on how to use this screen, but I'll go through it real quick. We don't want any pulse time. We want to be able to hit the red pulse button and it react instantaneously as opposed to holding it down for a set time, millisecond limit. Red pointer, this will become handy if you need to shut it off. And power. So I'm going to change this power down a little bit so that, let's do about 20. So 20% power, no pulse time. We will use the red dot to our advantage, and I'll talk about that in the back. I'm going to pulse this real quick, and we'll see exactly where that pulse is coming out of on my tube. And as you can tell, the angles are going to be a little bit odd to get on camera, but if you were looking at that from my vision right here, my viewpoint, you would see that that is a little low. So I'm going to have to lower this bracket just a little bit. I would say that it's less than a millimeter off. It is centered as far as right to left, but it is hitting just a hair lower than I want to. So I'm going to put this camera back on and show you how I adjust that. Okay, so I'm going to remove this tape, and like I said, you can see that it does kind of stick on there, so just be careful with that. Try to clean off any residue. But there are 3 Allen bolts that hold this on, and also you can see they're in a channel which allows you to move it up and down. So my spot or my pulse was a little low, so I'm going to have to move this down a little bit. So I'm just going to lightly loosen it so it doesn't drop completely. As I loosen the third one, I'm going to hold it so that it doesn't drop, and I know that I only have to move it a hair down. So I will move it lightly, tighten one back up so the position doesn't change. And then I will tighten the others up. And then what I'm going to do is pulse again to check and make sure that I am making the proper adjustments. And again, this thermal paper makes a really sweet outline, very easy to tell where the opening is, and then the pulse, you don't need a lot of power, it shows up very easily. All right, so looking at that minor adjustment I made, and keep in mind that most of these adjustments are very, very small. Any of our adjustments with our screws, any movement of these mirrors might be a very, very small movement in the near field, but that angle, if you held a broom and you moved it 1 inch to the left, it'll be 1 inch in front of you, but the other end of the broom, it'll be like 6 inches off. So just keep that in mind, that every move that you make can be a drastic one if you move it too much. All right, so I am super happy with the position of that. That is dead center now. I don't know if you can tell by the camera angle, but now it's time to take that off. And we'll put our beam expander back on. And again, there is an article and a video on how to adjust this beam expander to get the best performance as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is move to our mirror number 1. And what I'm looking for on this one is that the beam is in the middle again, and then also lining up with the red dot. Now these are 2 different planes. The red dot is being introduced in the combining lens, and the beam is passing through the combining lens. So they don't follow the exact same path. But we can use this red dot to our advantage, so we know when we're moving the mirror where we're moving the beam. And I'll kind of show that a little bit better when we start messing around with mirror 1 if it is off. So I'm going to pulse this and see how close that is. Okay, with a quick pulse on mirror 1, I can see that I am a little high, and this is all going to relate to the tube angle. So there are 2 Allen bolts that hold these slide pins in, and then you have a grub screw or a thumb screw here where you can turn and raise and lower the actual tube. So you may want to take some measurements of where this is sitting at, wherever you can find a good spot to measure, and make sure that it is not sitting at an angle. Once you know it's not at an angle, I'm probably, I don't know, maybe a millimeter too high, a millimeter and a half. So I'm going to lower this tube by turning this grub screw here, this thumb screw adjustment, and that will lower my tube a bit. Let's see if I can get a different angle at it. Okay, and once I do that, I'm going to pulse again, and I'm just trying to get into the center. Okay, I'm just trying to get back into the center of the mirror input. So let's go ahead and pulse again. Okay, so with a couple of turns of that screw on the tube, I was able to get the beam going into mirror 1 dead centered. Luckily, my red dot is also centered in that beam. But what we would do if it wasn't, and the reason why we want the red dot to be centered with the beam now is so that we can use it as a guide. Again, these are traveling at different angles. So your beam is coming straight across, red dot is introduced right here, and then getting reflected 90 degrees here. So they're not the same path, but we can absolutely use this red dot to our advantage. So what you would do, if it was off, you can see I'm moving it here. If it was off, you would tune this red dot by using all 3 or 2 of these. I like to use 2 of the 3 adjustment screws, one as a pivot point, and the other ones as a up-down. So if you look at my top one that I'm turning, I'm moving it down and up, and then I can use my right or my left here to make it go right and left. All right, so this is only controlling the red dot, and we want the red dot as centered with this pulse so that we can use it to our advantage and see where we're moving the mirrors, the beam with the mirrors, and we'll go through that on the next one, because we probably will have to move this a few times and match it up with the pulse. All right, let's move on to mirror 1 adjustments to mirror 2. All right, quick note, if you did adjust your tube, let's take some measurements to make sure that we are kind of sitting as flush as possible. I'm going to look here, and I'm a couple of notches higher than 12 centimeters, and same here. So if you were sitting at a huge angle, you would adjust and lower this back down. And make sure you lock these so that they are not going to move. Okay, so looking at my mirror 1 to mirror 2, so going from mirror 1 all the way over to here to mirror 2, you can see the red dot is way off. It's way to the left. I'm going to do a pulse real quick. Okay, so as you can see, my pulse is almost dead on, but my red dot is not. So at this point, this is where we want to drive the red dot to the beam, to that pulse. So using our Allens, let's see if I can get both adjustments here. All right, so you can see with my bottom right adjustment, I'm going to try to walk it right or left. I have to go to the right and match up with that pulse. Okay, I'm right below it. I can use a little bit of adjustment upwards. So now I'm going to use the top one to drive it up and in the center of that pulse. And the reason for this, even though they are on different planes, you know, they are traveling different paths, the reason behind that is now I know when I move this mirror, I can watch the movement I'm actually making with the mirror. This is where you're going to need an Allen key and a flathead screwdriver so that we can make small minor adjustments on this one. And again, minor adjustments. All right, I pulsed again, and I would like to say that that is pretty dead center. I might be able to move it a little bit to the left. Again, just picking one of them. Okay, and I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to lock down this mirror. And I want to make sure that, again, I do not drive this beam anywhere by locking this down. I'm watching the red dot, making sure that by tightening these and locking this in, that I'm not moving the mirror. Okay, so now we're going to move to mirror 2 to mirror 3, making sure that we are headed in the right direction down to the head. Okay, so I just did a pulse again, and as you can see, my red dot and my pulse are dead center of each other, but definitely not where I want it to be in relation to the center of the mirror 3. So we are going to repeat this process again by loosening these screws here, these locking screws, keeping an eye again on the tape over there, making sure we're not walking this beam all over the place just by loosening the holds, the hold down screws. And now I'm going to do my best to move this beam up and a little to the left. So let's zoom back out so you can see my adjustments. And again, these are small movements. There. Okay, so that is more centered than it was, and what I'm going to do is pulse again and see how much more I have to move it. All right, so that's not too bad. I am going to make a couple of fine tuning adjustments here. Just a little bit, because I think it's a hair off, and we really, really want to get as dead center as possible. So, I mean, these were literally a movement that far. Like, I'm not moving hardly any. That movement I just showed you of the screwdriver, where you could barely tell I moved it. Look how far it's moving the beam path. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to pulse it one more time to make sure. All right, so the last piece of this puzzle is going to be using your pulse screen or your alignment screen to run a pulse in multiple locations. So we'll slide it over to the top left, pulse. All right, so pulse there. Come over, take a look. That is dead on. We'll go to the center. Pulse again. still dead on. I'm going to go over to the bottom right. Pulse again. All right, and now because of the fact that it is so dead on, I actually have a hole in this tape or this paper. And while we have a blotchy style pulse, that is not a concern to me. The way this tube produces a beam is bouncing back and forth a few times before it actually comes out. So our instantaneous pulses are not stable. They're not stable enough to create a solid beam. So you may see a little splotchiness, but what we want is a dead center result, which is what we have. I hope this helped some of you dial in your alignment. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to support@thunderlaserusa.com.